My name is Conetzkey. I'm the editor of the Des Moines Business Record. With us today, we've got an established group of young professionals. All of them have had really good professional careers and also have been very involved in the community. And our goal today is to be taking a look a little bit into the mind of a young professional. A lot of times you have data and numbers that get out there about the millennials and young professionals. And what we really want to do is bring together a group and talk through some of those topics, some of those business topics and community topics, to try to get their thoughts and opinions on what young professionals want. We've got an array on the age scale, and sometimes one of the things that I'm sure we're going to talk about is the word young professional can mean a lot of different ages, and that'll be one of the topics we talk through. And also millennial. We were talking beforehand, and one of our panelists said, well, I'm not a millennial. So that'll be one of the things that we talk about today as well. Much like some of our other video roundtables that we've done before, I'm going to address the camera now, but Ann, our managing editor, she is also going to be taking some notes. Once we get into the conversation, we're going to be having a conversation amongst ourselves, so feel free to be a fly on the wall. We're going to go ahead and get things started off. So Ann, Carothers-Kay, I'm going to turn it over to you. She's our managing editor. She's been with the Business Record for just about 4 years, but she spent how many years at the Register?
More than I'd like to.
More than she's not a young professional.
I'm not a young professional.
She spent a number of years at the Register and as well as Meredith as well. So, Ann, you want to go ahead and start things off?
Sure. And I'm excited to hear from our young professionals, which is a range of ages, so I'm glad about that. Our first question is about civic involvement, and one of the questions that we know young professionals have is not just how do they get involved civically, but how do they make that leap from volunteering to serving on a board of an important organization or an organization that they feel is important. So if I would ask each of the panelists to briefly introduce themselves and then just share any experience or anecdotes that you have about that and maybe give some advice to business leaders, heads of boards, on how they can help those young professionals make that leap. So Emily, would you like to start?
Great, yes. My name is Emily Shields. I'm the Executive Director of Iowa Campus Compact. We work with colleges and universities across the state on their community engagement and service, so really helping to bring higher ed and community together to deepen student learning and make community impacts. My background is in politics, and that's really what I'm passionate about being involved in. That's a lot of what I do on the side as a hobby and the kind of thing I care about. And I also have 2 little kids, so I kind of represent the maybe older young professional with a little bit of a different perspective as now a wife and mom and kind of some different priorities. I guess my perspective is coming more since I run a nonprofit and I have some background in government, I'm usually the person facilitating a board. So my advice would be more to think a lot about what you really care about and the kind of things you actually want to do, and make sure that being on a board or commission or any other way you're being involved in an organization is the kind of thing you want to be doing. Because what nonprofits need is people who really want to be there and to do more than show up at meetings. You know, nonprofits have boards to give them oversight, to help raise money, to help put events together, to help represent them in the community. And anyone who does that, I think, really needs to make sure that that's how they want to spend their time, because that's what nonprofits need to move their work forward. And so my advice would just be to help people think through not just the causes they care about, I think that's important, but also the kind of thing they want to do, because there are a lot of different ways to be a board member, be involved. And so if being involved in fundraising events is something you really like doing, then do that. But it might be that you like to look at spreadsheets and help with that kind of thing. So just thinking about how you actually would want to spend your time and making sure you're making some good connections there.
Thanks.
I'm Adam Kaduce. I'm a commercial real estate director with R&R Realty Group. We're Des Moines' largest commercial real estate developer of office, industrial, and retail properties, and I work on the brokerage team. So actively working with businesses that are looking to grow and find homes in the Des Moines area. To your question, I think one of the best things that folks who are on the board looking to kind of cultivate that younger talent, find a way to bring younger people into their board, is look at who your volunteers are. Typically, young people are getting involved in those organizations because they have a passion for it. They want to spend time volunteering, Who are those folks that are on the front line who are really doing the day-to-day work of that organization, and approach them, find an opportunity. If they like the spreadsheets, then there's probably a finance committee. If they like the volunteer operations, there's probably a volunteer committee, or up to the board level. I think just having a conversation with those folks who are there every weekend or every day, or really your most instrumental people, and saying, how can we get you more involved on a higher level? How can the organization help you grow and grow with you? Just having that conversation with those folks.
Thanks, Adam.
My name is Cory Sharp. I am an intern architect at FEH Design, which is an architecture, interior design, and structural engineering firm located in East Village. We do a number of projects all across the state and the surrounding states. I have been working on their architecture team for a little over 4 years now. I'm also the president of the Young Professionals Connection, and I sit on a number of other transit boards around town that deal with more than just DART, but more multimodal type transit that I've been involved with lately. Being involved civically is really important to me. Just like Adam said, I got involved personally with YPC from support from a supervisor of mine when I was an intern, actually. And they sort of suggested to me that they felt that I'd be really good at getting on a board and providing that energy that I have in the office in more than one outlet. Des Moines is a place where you can find those opportunities really easily. That was one of the reasons I came back here after I graduated from college, was because I saw the impact that young people can have here in Des Moines, and that was something that I had interest in getting involved with, but wasn't really exactly sure what kind of direction I was going to take with it. But having that support from my supervisors and my company about getting more involved was really important to me. So, yeah.
Great.
Nice. My name is LaVerne Greenfield. I'm a development associate with Habitat for Humanity. And I guess I'll just keep it simple. If you are interested in getting involved with boards and commissions, first step is always volunteering. It starts with volunteering, and then the next thing you would want to do is talk to some of those board members that are currently serving, and the person that are facilitating those boards, so the staff members of those organizations that you might be interested in. The biggest thing, if you're going to commit to a board, is you've got to have time for it. You've got to be passionate about that organization. So if you try to join a board that's something that you just want to do to pad your resume, it's really not going to be beneficial to you or that organization. So make sure that you are truly interested in their cause and their mission, and that you are going to represent that organization when you're in front of the board and also in your free time.
Great. Thank you, Kim. I'm Kim Hanken. I work for the American Heart Association. I'm their Heart Ball director, so nonprofit world. I work with volunteers day in, day out. I once was a volunteer myself before I became the Heart Ball director at the American Heart Association. Background about me, I was the chairperson for the Inc. Young Professionals last year, so this year I sit on the board as their ex officio. I currently sit on the YP Iowa board, which is the statewide board for young professionals. I am also a mother. I have 4 children at home. The advice that I give to people about volunteering as the young professionals, make sure you're passionate about it, because the time commitment can be huge. But on the volunteer management side for myself, when you identify a volunteer who has potential, is to bring that up to them. Not always will that volunteer come to you and ask for more responsibilities or make that greater commitment. So as that executive or that leader, if you see that potential in someone, to take it to them and ask them and share, and always be brutally honest with the expectations. Sharing those expectations up front, I think, is very important, because you're going to get the most out of that volunteer if they know what you would expect from them.
It strikes me that there's potential barriers, right? That if I am a young professional and somebody reached out to you and say, I want to do this. Are there some other barriers that prevent young professionals from possibly being more involved in the community?
I think there might just be a little bit of nervousness. I know before this event, I was having a conversation with someone about, taking that first step of if you decide to go to a networking event, or you decide to try and pursue something that's maybe a little bit out of your comfort zone, and you get to that event, but you sit in your car before you, hop in and you say, okay, I want to do this, that I think there's just some of that comfort zone issues that we deal with a lot. A lot of the events that YPC puts on, we try and really break down those walls and make sure it's open to anybody and everybody to be totally comfortable with any environment that they would come up to. But a lot of it is that first step of saying, okay, I'm gonna get out of my car and I'm gonna go into this event.
That's a good point. You know, if you are a person who is on, if you're on a board, if you're a business leader and you're looking to recruit people to your organization and you're having events like that, make sure you're not just standing and talking with the board. Make sure that you're actually getting out. And if you see people that are there for the first time or people that maybe don't have a group of people to talk to, make sure you're talking to those folks, because that's the perfect opportunity. It's amazing what happens in this town just based off of a single conversation. And just making sure that you're open and willing to have those conversations. If you see new people, that you're talking to them, that you're having those conversations, because I think you'd be surprised how far just a single conversation can go.
The next question is about workplace culture, and we hear a lot of comments about young professionals may have different expectations for their role in the workplace. And in our pre-event meeting, we were hearing a story about a millennial who went to his middle-aged supervisor and complained that another older supervisor had been yelling at him. And so the supervisor kind of worked through and talked through this and said, well, the supervisor wasn't yelling at you. He was telling you you didn't meet the expectations of the task. So there was a real difference of viewpoint about the young professional felt like they were really in trouble. They were getting dressed down, and it wasn't that, but there was a difference in communication. So if you can articulate in your own experience or what your peers have told you, some of those disconnects, and what can business leaders and supervisors do to sort of bridge that gap or be aware of how a young professional may be perceiving things differently, maybe act differently. So anyone have any thoughts? You want to jump in?
I think sometimes that does get painted as a young professional issue, but to be honest, the management theory supports giving more positive feedback than negative. So I'm not actually sure it's a young professional thing. I think it's just a good workplace culture thing to give people lots of positive feedback and make sure you're reinforcing what they're doing well as what they could improve. And I think most humans respond well to that, not just young professionals. So maybe it's a culture shift in that young professionals are voicing more that that's what they want, but I don't know that it's just, sort of our generation that wants that as a person.
I think it's just kind of like you can't really expect everyone to treat you the same way. Like you can't expect an introvert in IT to treat you the same way as someone in sales and marketing. You have to get used to different personalities. And if someone that's going to yell at you, or technically yell at you, if you're looking for nice feedback, they can say you're doing an okay job, you're doing all right. I would much rather have that constructive criticism saying, okay, this is where you're wrong, but this is how we can make it better. I'd rather have that opinion where someone told me where I made a mistake, but let's see what we can do to actually fix that. Versus it's okay, we'll get it around next time. So I see it as not really being yelled at. I see it as more like constructive criticism just from a different personality.
I think it's more of a communication issue, not a young professional issue. It's a communication issue. I've seen it in my own workplace, but what works well if we're working with a different age range of individuals is to take that manager, that executive, taking the time to understand how that person likes to communicate or what works well, what doesn't, and then modify the management style with each individual person. So it doesn't become a young professional issue or an aging employee issue. It's just a communication. Everyone knows how to communicate.
You guys are also successful. I'm sure there's been times where you've made a mistake at work or been challenged. Or you've seen somebody else in the age range make a mistake. Are there some strategies for that you guys enjoy, and not enjoy, but would appreciate when you've had a hurdle that you've had to overcome in the workplace?
I try and tell the peers around me in my workplace that you can't ever ask too many questions. At least that's the way that I prefer to communicate with sort of my superiors, because I feel like I'm just always asking them questions to make sure that the task that I'm doing or the expectations that I'm trying to meet are being met properly. And sometimes I feel like we'll get caught up assuming too many things, and then things get miscommunicated, and we have to have conversations, right? So I just do my best to just actively ask those questions, be proactive, and try and see things before they happen.
Yeah, I'd rather just somebody, just be direct. Just if there's a problem, just let me know and we'll fix it. I mean, I think it does get painted as kind of like, oh, millennials, you got to kind of sue them and talk to them different and, give us a trophy along with it. But, I just don't think that's the case. I think it's, if there's an issue, just let us know, we'll fix it, and we'll move on.
Absolutely. And I think too, if you make a mistake, just own it right away. And as a manager, if someone does own it right away, respect that and give them credit for that, and then talk about how you'll fix it together.
And even with what Adam said about being direct, it's don't just tell them about the mistake, offer coaching. Help them.
Yep.
Or work through it with them rather than saying, well, you did that wrong and walk away. It's a lot easier to have open communication if you trust the person you're working with.
One of the other things that I'm always kind of struck by is I think young people, young professionals, just are gung-ho in so many things. But I will share an anecdote from when I worked at the Register. We had a young intern, and he came in and he said, I just don't understand why you've got this David Yepsen covering all the presidential candidates. Why does this old guy get to do it, and why don't I get to do it? Of course, we all laughed, and oh, how funny, and what a young upstart he was. But looking back on that, everybody just dismissed him. Nobody said, oh, here's a young guy that really wants to cover politics. What can we do to maybe pair him with our experienced political reporter? And so, I mean, that was really a case where the ball was dropped. And so, do you guys have experiences or anecdotes, or do you hear things from other young professionals where they just, they're trying to get some more responsibility, they're trying to get to that next level, and they're just, what do they need? What can be done better? Any thoughts on it?
That happened. I've never been described as patient. And I've definitely had experiences where I was sort of, push down and stay in your corner and stay in your lane. And I get that now, I understand that more than I used to, but I also think it might have been better for people to try to channel that energy, like you were saying. It clearly was from a place of feeling like I was ready to do things, and rather than pointing out that I needed to put in my 20 years or whatever before I could do them, I think saying that you appreciate the energy and enthusiasm and here's some projects to run with. I think that's the biggest thing, is having things you can have ownership over and really run with and try out your creativity on, and maybe mess up and fail on, but being given those opportunities, I think is important.
Companies that are embracing people like that, who are going to want to do kind of a jack of all trades, want to jump in and get engaged, I think are going to be rewarded. I mean, in Des Moines, where we've got an unemployment that's so low, and trades, certain segments of the population in Des Moines have less than 1% employment. I think companies that grasp those people and find ways to be that creative outlet for them are going to be richly rewarded, and those people are going to stay with them. And I look back on when I first started R&R, I get a whole bunch of projects dumped on my desk and really very little guidance as to here's how to get it done, and you just kind of figure it out. I think that's if you give those people some ownership in some projects, and I think the other thing is pairing that with a mentorship program so that they can learn, whether it's formal or informal, learn from some of the people who have been there. So you're also creating your own way, but you've also got people to bounce ideas off of, bounce questions off of. I think business leaders and businesses and not-for-profits in Des Moines that recognize that and take advantage of those folks and give them an outlet for their energy are really going to find themselves succeeding.
Yeah, I would kind of echo what Emily was saying. I'm one of those people that really likes to try and get in probably before I'm ready, and try and find ways that I can be more active in my workplace that maybe is outside of my expectation level. But I know that there are peers of mine who I would consider very similar to myself that have found that to be a struggle. And I think that's disappointing, because I feel like the company that I work for is finding a lot of really great benefits out of the stuff that I'm doing, and I wish that could happen for some of my peers.
Does that ambition often put you in conflict with, let's say, somebody who's been there 10 years longer, and they're like, well, why is he getting this job?
Yeah.
I've been here 10 years. How do you
Sure.
guys handle that, if you notice that, and how can business leaders kind of elevate the people who want the jobs without alienating people who would also like those?
Sure. I've certainly run into that. I just try and do the best job that I can to make sure the decision that company made to allow me to do those things was a good choice. And that's how I try and defend
that stuff.
And young professionals might just have to work that much harder to prove why they're being given that responsibility. But
I think everybody can, I can think of cases where somebody wanted to do something and they weren't ready. And so the question is, if you're in the management position, how do you have that conversation? And does the person have the self-awareness to know that maybe they're not? And if they're not, what can be done to get to that point? And I think that's always the real trick. If you don't have that self-awareness, I think the eager beaver, young hotshot coming in, that can be very off-putting, and then people don't want to help, right?
Yeah.
I think what can management do to help those individuals is when you have that conversation, be honest and say, you're not ready for this opportunity, but here's what I would do for you to help you get ready. So next time when it is your turn, you're ready for it. It's offering that coaching, the extra step, not just telling them you're not ready, walking away. That step is what is needed, I think, with anybody, not just young professionals, is to get them to the next level.
Also, I think like when you get that point and you get that first denial, that's a perfect time for you to say, okay, so what can I do to get to that point? Like it's an opportunity for you to take on some minor projects or something that no one else may want to do to prove your worth to that person. So it's just, you have to see it as an opportunity. Every time you may get shut down or denied for something you really want to do, use that to your advantage to say, okay, so what can I do? Give me 3 things that I can do for you so I can get to that next step.
It sounds like a lot of the answers we're having to these questions is just really making sure those communication channels are open and we're having sort of honest, communicative feedback with each other. Even though we're young professionals, we're still all adults. We can have these conversations with our superiors and we can get a lot of great things out of it.
What happens when you hear silence? You're not hearing the feedback.
as a young professional,
Yeah.
you have to ask for it.
And if you're not asking, then you really don't want it then.
And I think you may have to be aggressive with it. I mean, if you're really not getting the feedback and you want feedback, you have to be realistic with your expectations. I don't think, and maybe it is weekly, but you've got to be aggressive with talking to your supervisor or the person that oversees you and asking for how often you want feedback and when is the right time and setting up. And it may require some back and forth as to establishing a type of schedule, but I think you absolutely have to.
The issue of work-life balance certainly isn't unique to young professionals, but I am curious about maybe some of the differences or the things that you think young professionals really are looking for that's a struggle with work-life balance, and maybe I'll pose that question to the moms first. So,
Well, I don't believe in work-life balance, so I don't think it exists.
Integration.
Yeah. Work wins one day, life wins the next, sometimes the community wins. It's just, knowing how to manage your calendar and making sure what you're committing to, you're passionate about. It helps to have the support from your employer and from home, whoever that is at home, to help you out so you can make those commitments. But yeah, I don't think work-life balance actually exists.
Well, I don't know about Kim, but I don't have a housewife. So supporting both men and women in maybe not balancing, but being able to be at home and be actively a part of their children's lives and a part of running the household just has to happen. And it's changing, but it hasn't fully evolved, and many businesses are still set up as though they're employing people who have somebody at home who's taking care of that, and most of us don't. So just recognizing that we're trying to share these roles. My husband and I are working really hard to try to be 50-50, and we need employers who support both of us in that. Flexibility is really important, I think, from the employer. 2 weeks ago, I had to work from home because my daughter had an accident, so it was nice that my employer was like, you stay home with your daughter. But the flexibility part of it is very important, and recognizing if you're passionate about a civic duty or something to support, maybe leaving early to go attend an event or being in the community. That's important for an employer and employees.
I have the sense that young professionals are much more likely to convey, in whether it's directly or in more generic ways, that if they aren't getting the support they feel they need from their employer, that there's another job out there. And, you know, my generation didn't do that. We just, you know, we asked for stuff and then we sucked it up and we didn't get it. So, do you guys have thoughts about that? Are there things that you definitely ask for or you look for in a job? And I'm not just talking about, you know, children and things at home. I'm talking about all sorts of things that you would like in your life that your job should not take away.
One thing one of my old bosses, mentors taught me is that no matter what you're doing, it's just a job. When it comes down to it, at the end of the day, it's just a job. That's what you go there to make money. Yes, you might be passionate about it, you might love it, but it's still a job. You need to put your family first, and that's all that really matters at the end of the day. So I've had a chance to work for a few people like that, and I just can't imagine working in an environment where they wanted me to choose between my family and my career. Family's always going to win. That's just the bottom line to it. I don't know, it's kind of hard to see to come up with that divide on to make that choice. If there's an emergency at home, I'm always going to choose family. If it's even like a soccer game or something for kids that I don't have, yeah, I would, I would choose them first. So, yeah, it's when it comes to like that part, it's just you've got to put family first. I mean, you're not going to remember what you did at your job on Tuesday, but you remember your kids' first steps.
I think the other thing that at least I hear a lot about is finding meaningful work. I think you've got to. LaVerne was right. It's just a job. I mean, I think you've got to find a job that you have passion for and excitement for, and you want to go do every day. And I think employers need to help try and find a way to make that meaningful, especially for some of their younger talent that it may be more difficult to find exactly how, whatever the entry-level job, how is that meaningful? But I think finding opportunities, maybe providing some of that flexibility so they can get engaged in a group in the community or can be a little bit more involved, because they've got to find a way to make that meaningful for their employees and find a way that they can find this is something that's really, you know, whether it changes the world, it certainly changes the world for that individual.
Is there a benefit? It could be a very specific benefit or something you're looking for that would keep you in your job, or that if you were looking, and then you guys aren't, because you guys are unhappy, that you'd be looking for if you were going to, that would be a deal breaker if you were looking at a new employer.
I would say for me, it's just having that flexibility and that support of a business to allow me to do other things that I'm passionate about that can also positively impact the stuff that I'm doing in my office. I certainly wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for that business support that I've gotten involved with YPC. I certainly have a really fun time when we go to events with some of my coworkers, and they'll be like, "How do you know that guy?" And I'll be like, "Well, it's because of this other stuff that I'm doing with YPC, and thank you so much for allowing me to do that." If it wasn't for that support and that flexibility, I don't think that I would pursue that company.
I think they also have to realize that by doing those extra events, you're learning. It's additional educational sessions. Those are things you're going to pick up things that you can bring back to your business. Every time you go to, a committee meeting, a lunch and learn, or just networking after work, you're going to meet someone, you're going to learn something new. And you can bring that back to your organization and say, hey, this is what I learned, and they're trying this, let's give this a shot. So it just saying that you should just stay at your office from 9 to 5 all day is really not beneficial when people learn so much from everyone doing so many different things in the community.
I think part of that comes down to feeling valued and trusted. And I have that in my current job. I wouldn't want to go anywhere where I didn't have that. No one's clocking how much time I'm spending sitting in my office chair. But I have aggressive metrics for what I'm supposed to be getting done, and that's what I'm judged on. And how I get that done and when I go to other meetings and how I make that work is up to me. And that, to me, is more important than a lot of how much I'm getting paid and what some of the other benefits are.
I think that trust has to go, that goes a long way. That's a big one for me too. If my boss were in my office all the time saying, okay, you went to this meeting, what, justify to me why going and doing that panel was good for real estate. I mean, I think those would be hard conclusions to draw, and that they trust you to say, again, it's got to be paired with results. If you don't have results, you're probably not going to get the trust. But if you can show both, then that would certainly drive me away. Somebody who's in my office all the time wondering why I'm doing what I'm doing and how's that going to equate to dollars or revenue per firm.
I think I've heard flexibility, trust, and opportunity, but when you think about concrete HR benefits, what do you think your generation what would they say, I'd really like that maybe we didn't? I mean, recently we had a story about some companies beginning to offer the benefits where they will help the new employee pay down student loans. I was talking to my son, who's still in college, and he was dumbfounded by the fact that my husband and I had no student loans coming out of college. My generation didn't worry about that. Can you think of some things that you'd really like to have, or you've heard your peers say, "Oh, I'd really like to have that. I would go to this company because they offer that benefit." On-site childcare or
that or some benefits
a subsidy
towards that.
or...
Yeah, my employer matches the tax credit for childcare. That's great. Even more benefits. I mean, the expense of that is astronomical and forces, I think, some families into a tough decision in terms of whether most people can afford to work. So looking at that, but then parental leave, and there definitely is not enough of that in this state.
This is maybe a bigger thing, but I think transparency. Transparency in what the vacation policy is, transparency in what the bonus structure is, transparency in what the parental leave policy is. I think making those things clear so employees know exactly what the policies are, so you don't have those moments where there's an uncertainty. And I think having a rationale for why the policies are what they are. Certainly a lot of the young people I'm talking to, I think we always ask why. Why is it this way? Why is it that way? And just because that's always been the way it's been isn't a very good answer for your young talent. I think it's having that transparent policy. Here's what the policies are, and here's why they are what they are.
What I love about my employer is that we get VTO, so or volunteer time off. As someone who's probably addicted to volunteering, it's really nice that they pay for me to go out in the community and support the community with my time and efforts. So that, I think, is important to me. I don't want to eat into my PTO time volunteering, and so they recognize that.
Do they have a limit on that, or do they?
Yeah, we have a limit on it, but we also have a really great wellness program where we can earn even more volunteer time and PTO time off by being healthy and fit.
I heard a rumor that there used to be something called sick time. I think that would actually be a benefit. And honestly, really, because you're battling that in your PTO, taking your personal time off, you could be saving up for vacation, next thing you know, you catch the flu. That ruins everything. You have to deal with either coming to the office, sick, unhealthy, infecting everyone else around you, or, toughing it out and canceling all your future plans. So honestly, I think I saw that once at a job in 2005, but it's been unheard of ever since.
I would really appreciate a pet-friendly office place. I have a little tiny little pup that I bring in on Friday afternoons, and it makes the whole workplace much happier. It's really wonderful.
All right. This is not about the job, but just outside issues. I'd like to hear about some of the things you guys are passionate about. You talked about politics, but some of the passions that you have, or you feel that young millennials, the issues that, maybe it's transit, maybe it's politics. Talk a little bit about that, if you would.
I'd be happy to talk about transit. One thing that I think...
help explain it for people.
Well, sure.
I think that's the challenge. It always gets said as young professionals love mass public transportation.
I think it helps if it's done correctly. If you look at some of Des Moines' competitor cities, if you look at Chicago or Minneapolis or Kansas City, those are cities that are really highly efficient in public transit. And if you're a business owner and you know that you're trying to recruit top talent to come to your city, you're going to try and find some of that young people that want to come into the town and maybe decide to live there car-free, without a car. And that's something that I think really enticing the young people that are coming out of New York, that are coming out of California, to come to a community and not have to own a car, be able to get around town, and really have that really great work, live, play scenario. And I don't think we've really gotten there in Des Moines yet. I think if we can really improve our public transit system, our multimodal transit system, that the businesses are going to get the dividends of that. We can recruit more talent that a lot of our competitors are recruiting right now.
You guys see on public transportation? We got a public transportation lover. But I'm curious, when you see other professionals either using it or not using it, and then what would their reasons be for not? Just curious. I should say, does anybody take the bus?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Just like, out of curiosity, I don't.
I want to phrase it as like multimodal transit. So I'm not talking
Sure.
about just buses. I could be
Sure.
talking about BRT. I could be talking about walkability. I could be talking about bike lanes. I mean, it's a number of different things. One thing that we're doing really well right now is our trail system.
Yeah.
Our trail system could compete with anybody in the nation. But I think we lack some of the bike safety and some of the walkability safety that like I said, a lot of our competitors have. So let's try and maybe phrase it that way.
Yeah, I always feel like I'm oddly unprofessional, and I say I live in downtown, and I could get on the B line and take it, and yet it's also just it's a mile drive in my car.
Yeah.
So
And you have parking.
and I have to have a car because I'm going to go to Ames.
Right.
And so the question that's the challenge in the current, and I could absolutely see a time where that would be awesome if I was living in
Right.
downtown, didn't have to do that.
What if you didn't have a parking lot outside though?
Right.
I think for most people, it does have to get pretty inconvenient
Yeah.
to be in your car for it to really be of interest. And I think Des Moines is headed in that direction. Certainly it's something I would like to see from an environmental perspective, but from a day-to-day consumer choice perspective, if it's still really convenient to drive somewhere, that's what most people are going to choose.
Yeah, unless there's like another 100,000 people in the city, most people are going to take their cars in the first place. And you can get anywhere in 19, 20, 30 minutes. Like Altoona to West Des Moines is what, maybe 30, 35 minutes. And the fact that I guess there's just this stereotype of people, do you really want to take the bus to get to A to B, and how long is that going to take? 19 minutes versus 2 hours, and how many transfers are you going to take to get from A to B? And another thing is, like, is there a complete direct route where I need to go? Right now, we live in a world where we need to get to A to B without worrying about everything in the middle. Can we get there directly and fastly and do what we need to do before we, end our day?
The challenge for Des Moines, if that's the sentiment. The sentiment is that I would love to take it and be easy and convenient. And the question is, as the population keeps growing, what's that going to look like? Especially for me. So, Adam, you're on the planning zone here.
The economic development oversight, yeah. No, I think I don't ride the bus. I go a lot during my day, so it's just so much more convenient to get in my car, go from point A to point B, and all places in between. And I think it's a culture. I think in order to get more people to take advantage of some of the public transportation options, it's going to take a significant culture change, a significant more inconvenience in people's lives. But I think the thing is too, when you see buses driving around and they're empty, it's like, well, why should we have more buses? I think that's a tough case to make to a lot of people. But I do think we're making great strides on our trails. I run on trails. I bought my house kind of because of a lot of the trails that were in the area. But I think just framing the conversation with a lot of people and not just talking about maybe how to get to work, but how you can enjoy some of the public access spaces that we have more recreationally.
Are there any other issues that you think are public issues that young professionals seem to be, and we talked a little bit, with the transit, we're getting a little bit into the environmental, we hear about urban design, we hear about, the cultural activities of the community. I know it's hard to generalize, but
I would just I think it would be hard to make the case to a lot of young people that you couldn't find a place for your passion in Des Moines. I mean, it seems like right now we have the Iowa caucuses that bring every presidential candidate to town. If politics or any subset of any issue within politics is of interest to you, you have an opportunity to really talk to whoever the next president is going to be. You have an opportunity to talk to them, visit with them, get involved in campaigns. With all the development that's going on in downtown Des Moines right now, projects going up all over the place. There's a lot of people working on different walkability. How do we be more green friendly? How do we have more arts in Des Moines? I mean, and pair that then with Des Moines has young people have the ability to get involved in those things. And I don't know a lot of other cities where I talk to colleagues in Chicago and New York and even smaller towns, they don't have the ability to get involved in those things. In Iowa, you can get on a presidential campaign and actually get to know the person who's going to be the president and get on these walkability things. You can. I'm on the Convention Center Hotel Board. Here's a $110 million 10-story Hilton Convention Center hotel that's going to be built, and I'm on the board for it. I mean, I don't think there's a lot of other towns in the metro or in the United States that will give young people that kind of access and let their voice be heard.
I think the young professionals and even, sort of the next generation that's coming out is much more focused on social justice and equity than maybe have been in past generations. And Des Moines definitely does lack, I think, a focus on diversity and equity. And I think we're always going to have trouble recruiting more young people to live here who want to be in a more diverse environment, to raise our kids in a more diverse environment without more of a focus on that. And I think that's something we need to do more on as a community.
Going in a completely different direction. So back to in the offices, we hear a lot about changing office design, for the last decade or so. It was all on the open floor plan. It was all kind of driven by, how young people want to work. They want the open space. They want to collaborate. Now they're kind of scaling back. Just personally, how do you like to work? How much would you like to work out of the office? Talk about that. Yeah.
It's actually a really interesting question and very timely for me. My office is going through a process of looking at, deciding to or not to redesign our office space or potentially move spaces. And so we're having that conversation. And it's really interesting because it's being asked to be led by the young people in our office. Our office sees that the young people are going to be the future. What is the office space of the future going to look like? And, we design offices for our clients all the time. So you'd think we'd have all the answers, but when we have to go back and look at ourselves in the mirror and ask ourselves, how do we really want to operate? Sometimes that's a tough question to answer. I think a lot of the young people in our firm really like an open and collaborative environment. We like big tables, we can scribble all over the place, but we also like to sit at our desk and put headphones in and listen to Led Zeppelin at full volume. So I think there's still somewhat of a divide in terms of what that office space of the future is going to look like. But I know, at least in our firm currently, as we're looking to design a new space for ourselves, it's seeming like it's leaning toward a more collaborative environment, one in which you can easily work together with partners or pairs that you might be nearby, that you can have some really great collaborative space within the office that isn't at your desk, that it's in maybe other work zones. And I think at least that's what we've done for our clients a lot recently. It's probably what we're going to lean to when we go forward with our own office design. So I'm very excited about it.
On the other side of that, I hate collaborative spaces. Honestly, for me,
Still like people going.
Right.
It could be that. It could be that. I think they're loud. They're very loud. You don't have that personal space that you can actually focus on what you're doing. If you look up, you could be staring someone right in the eye. It's like, why am I always staring at this person? I need to look at this screen. There's just so much room for distractions. And then also, when you want to speak with your manager, who knows if they're going to be at an open space or in an office. I've come from an organization where only our senior level VPs were in offices and everyone, directors down, were in open spaces. There really doesn't leave enough time for that quiet one-on-one conversation that that we're really looking for to develop and grow. That and they're just really loud.
Are they loud?
Yeah, they're very loud.
If you ask my coworkers about office space, they would vote that I would never come into the office. I am in everybody else's office talking, and nobody gets any work done. So I work best in a louder environment where I can put my earphones in. I like to go to coffee shops and work and get stuff done. I get more stuff done outside of office than I do in. And they do too.
Well, I think you mentioned wellness, and I think it's all been drilled into all of us that sitting at our desks is going to kill us. So,
I heard the other day it's new cancer. It's like smoking.
Yeah, so there's a different article every day just trying to scare the crap out of you about it. So, I don't know, and it's not like I don't want to stand at a desk all day, but just some recognition of being able to get up, move around, and not die.
We build a lot of buildings and build a lot of office spaces then for folks. And I think what we're seeing is it's kind of the pendulums. It was all offices, now it's swung to a lot more open space. And I think what we're seeing is it falling back towards that middle. the days of having an office are not gone. We're still seeing a need for those private conversations, for somebody to have a place where they can take a phone call, somewhere you sit with your supervisor and have those conversations. But I think we're also seeing a lot, even traditional professions, lawyers, folks like that who would have a lot of offices, at least putting some collaboration spaces in their workplaces where you can't, more like having a Panera or something like that in your office, maybe not without the food service, but at least having some different collaboration furniture where you can plug in computers and be able to everybody huddle up, and more informal meeting spaces that don't require the scheduling. I'd say the other thing that we're seeing a lot of is the technology. It's all technology driven. We're seeing more folks integrating laptops or tablets or iPads, things where folks can work wherever. If they want to work from their desk, or they're, like me, they're concerned they're going to die sitting at their desk, they can go and work in a collaborative area, or they can go work at Starbucks or things like that. We're seeing offices just be kind of streamlined in terms of technology, so that it's Wi-Fi, everything's enabled, you can access your systems anywhere. We're seeing a lot more of that being integrated too.
Anybody work at a place where you don't have your own desk at least? There's some,
We've got clients. In fact, I've toured a number of office spaces where it's literally, I think we call it office hoteling or workspace hoteling. You basically have this, I call it a Foot Locker, but it's probably got a better furniture name. But you kind of pull it around and you check in the morning. They're like, yep, you can go. These workstations are open. You pick one, you go, you plug your laptop in. It's all set up. It's got monitors and everything there, and you just pull your card over there, and you're good to go. And
You guys
just plug
like
in and
that?
go.
I got my snacks, and I got my stuff. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. And I think what's funny about that office hoteling, because I've asked those, we've talked to people about it, like, just because you can pick a different cube every day, everybody picks the exact same cube. Everybody goes to the same one. So I think it's, that may be again, pendulum, that may be just going a little bit further than people want, but it is a way to get more efficient. I mean, if you've got only 75%, you go to a flex work environment and 75% of your employees are in the office at any given time, you only need 75% as much office space. So it is a way if folks are looking to cut costs, we've seen them try and do it.
Dress codes? You guys are all in suits. Do you wear suits to the office? Do you have to wear suits? Would you rather not wear suits?
Today's a Thursday. I typically wear jeans on Thursdays. So I brought a change of clothes today. So I look decent for you all. But I appreciate being able to wear blue jeans to the office, but I'll typically wear khakis or a collared dress shirt. But I think it would be really great if it was a little bit more lax in the office, to be a little bit more comfortable. Sometimes I feel a little stuffy in a collared shirt, and it'd be nice to feel a little bit more comfortable in the workplace.
I have meetings. When I have meetings, I want to dress professionally, but casual Fridays are one of my favorite. In the wintertime, I like casual Fridays. A little more on the jeans today anyways, but Fridays are casual Fridays, as long as you don't have a face-to-face meeting. I have lots of meetings with C-suite executives, and I don't want to show up in jeans and a shirt and then ask them for money. It's just very unprofessional. So I think a professional dress code when necessary is important, but I do like if you've got nothing going on and you're just sitting in your office or in a coffee shop, then dress comfortably.
Yeah, for me, it's just wide open. I don't have to wear suits every day. I mean, I work for a nonprofit, and technically I'm tied to my desk, so I'm not out making those calls or meeting with those people who could be funding our projects. And also, there are times when I'm out on the job site, and if I come to a construction site in a suit, and it really doesn't blend in with the rest of your coworkers, so you kind of really put yourself out there as one of those guys instead of being part of the team. So for me, it really just depends on what's going on that day, what needs to happen, how much am I going to be in front of someone as far as like what I'm wearing. So the more flexible, the better.
So you guys have the autonomy, and you like that you have the autonomy to dress as appropriate. Do most of you have that autonomy? What about Adam? Do you have to dress up?
No, I was just thinking, I don't know, maybe I just disagree a little bit. No, I don't know. I like having like a work uniform. I don't have to wear,
I would like that too.
It's easier. It's easier to match. But maybe that's just a personal problem. But I think I don't know. And a mentor of mine told me this. He goes, "You'll really like dressing up for the first decade of your career, and then you'll wish you had a casual work." So maybe I'm just not there yet. But I like having. I don't have to wear a tie every day, but I'll typically wear, a blazer or a suit. But I kind of like that. I kind of like having a work uniform that's kind of my go-to. I feel like it kind of adds some credibility to what I do and adds some professionalism to what I do. So I kind of like it, and I guess I'm not forced to, but that's just kind of what I do. And I think the other thing is I have client-facing meetings pretty much. I mean, on the sales side, we're client-facing almost every day, all day. We have some casual days, but I just don't usually get to take advantage of them because I'm client-facing. But that's okay. I'm okay with that. So.
Emily, I suspect you have a little different perspective on that.
Well, if there were a uniform of what a woman wears as a professional, that would be cool. It's just that, but that's an entirely different thing.
I'm going to ask one final question. We're going to open it up for some questions from the audience also. So we call this what YPs want, right? The young professional term. And somebody said at one of our, Zach Mannheimer, the social club said at one of our events, he said, I came from New York, and that's just not a term that you use. That's not, I hadn't heard that term. What do you think of the term young professional? Negative connotations to it as well.
I don't like it. I don't like labels. I don't want to be labeled as a young professional. I think, and I actually just had this conversation with someone the other day, I think the word young has a negative connotation with partner with professional. It's almost you're naive or you're not quite ready. I'd rather be called an emerging leader. There's more potential with that. So, and then there's that ambiguity. What is young? What's the definition of young? So in AIME, there is no age cap for our young professional group. And we tell anybody, if you feel like you're young, then you're a young professional. That's just, it's a mindset. So I'm not a fan of labels. I don't think we should be stuck to whatever a millennial is supposed to be or a young professional. I think we're all individual people and we are who we are.
Well, I just see this. That's just, a term that someone older than me gave me. They had to go through it. It's kind of like, hazing. They had to go through it with the, baby boomers went through it with the greatest generation and so on and so on. That's just part of, growing up and coming of age and finding out who you are. It's kind of hard to say that we don't like the word young professional when it's shoved down our throats all the time, especially in the city where we've got so many records and so many awards for being a great place for young professionals. It's just one of those things you have to embrace and say, okay, yeah, I may have that title, but this is what I'm going to do for you.
I think I'd say I'm with Cam and LaVerne. I don't really appreciate the label, but I've kind of embraced it and stole my word, mindset. That's what YPC preaches all the time. We also don't have an age limit for it. But we also don't, I think the word professional sometimes puts it in a certain box too, that, maybe you are young, but maybe you aren't a professional, how does that really get defined? The way we say this is, like Kim said, a mindset. I like to think of a young professional as a person who is engaged, wants to be involved in the community, always wants to continue learning, is really motivated, and wants to, just figure out ways in which to make Des Moines better, wherever you're at, just a better place to live. And that's what YPC stands for, and I hope that that's what people understand when they are using the term young professional.
I really don't have any problems with the term. I think it, to Cory's point, I think that's what it stands for, at least in my mind. It's an eager up-and-coming person who's excited. I think in Des Moines, that actually carries quite a bit of clout. I think when we're trying to network or get to know, find mentors, and get to know more senior leaders in the community, I think using that title, I'm a young professional, I'm someone who's up-and-coming, I really like to get to know this community better, I actually think it carries a bit of weight with it, and I think it conveys to them that you're interested and that you want to continue to grow Des Moines. So I think maybe uniquely to Des Moines, it seems to have a great connotation, at least with the people that I'm talking to, and they seem to embrace it, kind of support it.
I've appreciated the recognition that if you're, new to a community and younger, just coming out of college, you need more opportunities to network and find, your peers in your community. So I think it's served that purpose well. I was really involved in YPC when I first moved to Des Moines a long time ago, and more recently I've been involved with the Des Moines Young Nonprofit Professionals, and I think the fact that it's really been used to create these communities is awesome. But that, I am coming up on 40, and then a few of my peers at that age, then it's kind of like, well, but what's next? Then am I a middle-aged? Is there a group for that? So I think it's just interesting to think about how we can all work together to continue to build a community, and maybe the young professional groups, don't have an age limit, and then we can just keep
hanging out.
It's a dynamic that we've spent a lot of time talking about, and those people in the audience too that we've talked about. What is that next step, especially when it starts to feel like there's an age, even if there isn't an actual age attached to the organization. If somebody's not, what happens when you move into that middle stage where you're not necessarily running principal financial, but you have the opportunity shown through that you can. So that's just a preview for an event coming in the fall. So but it's a really interesting topic, and people are talking about what comes next. I want to open up for questions from the audience. We have about 10 minutes or so. So, would anybody have the first question?
Yeah, I'm a foodie, so I want to get this idea of what's going on with a lot of chain restaurants. Obviously, but even in the greater Des Moines area, I'm from Omaha, Omaha has a ton of foodie, local type restaurants. I want to hear your guys' thoughts on why we don't have as many as other cities.
I would say that if you were here 10 or 15 years ago, that question would have been a lot more relevant. I think we have made incredible strides in providing much better dining options than we had 10 or 15 years ago, and I think you'll continue to see that trend continue. However, I will say there is one franchise in Des Moines that I find very great. It's called Tasty Tacos. And fortunately for all of us, it is just for Des Moines. So
we'll go sell a sponsorship.
Yeah.
This panel brought to you by.
Also, we're all going to go down to Hudson House and take shots.
Yeah,
there you go.
The answer, kind of answer the question, if you're looking at a regional perspective, Des Moines just doesn't have those numbers yet. We don't have the numbers to support a lot of different types of food. And the other thing, like, as far as like one of the other popular items, food trucks, there are just so many rules and regulations and stipulations that are blocking people from being entrepreneurs in the food industry. Like back in 2000, you would see trucks everywhere, and Nolan Plaza, now Coast Common, used to actually have food carts out there during lunch. Thanks to city regulations, those have been taken away. So for those opportunities to happen, you're going to see a lot of change on the government level for us to get different type of food options in the city.
And so I would say get involved in that.
Yep.
Be a foodie advocate and promote new places, but also talk to the city council about what we could change that would encourage. I was so freaking excited about food trucks and really tried to champion that a lot, so that, because I think leaders sometimes need to see that it is important to the people who live here.
More questions from the audience?
Question.
Yeah.
As a young professional, what is a challenge that you face personally, professionally, that you feel like is more common than you think, but people aren't necessarily willing to talk about it? Or you don't talk about it because you feel like maybe there is a lack of transparency to it, so you're not always comfortable bringing it up or addressing it, but in the back of your mind, you might also think, okay, there's probably more people that deal with this than I think, and what's something personally, professionally, that would fit that category for you?
I would guess failure. A lot of people have problems speaking about when they fail and how they can actually learn from it. Even me personally, I don't like to talk about when I fail because, we're all supposed to be superheroes. We do the best. We know what we're doing at all times, and we always have all the answers. Talking about failing and what you learn from that and what you're going to get out of that is something I think that we really struggle with talking about.
I'm the opposite. My boss actually has told me to stop looking for reasons to fail and to embrace when I'm successful. So I think a lot of it is self-awareness, I think, is a huge thing, being self-aware of who you are and how you communicate and being able to adjust that to whoever your audience is. I'm always focused on failure, not on the success, and that's probably my biggest downfall versus probably the opposite.
I'd say one of them that I hear about that I think is an underlying one all the time is understanding your own personal finances, and especially with stuff going on with student debt. I think it's really easy to. One of the things I always say is the phrase you always had it a little bit better than your parents ever had it. So a lot of us probably grew up in nicer houses than our parents grew up in. they got to go out to restaurants. I got to go to a chain restaurant, right? But my kids are going to get to go to nicer restaurants. And so over time, what that kind of does, and when you come out of college and you've been in nicer dorms than before, and now you have to go live.
Are they the same dorms, right?
Right. But you've had the opportunity to live in nicer things, and now all of a sudden you're making a smaller salary, and you're having to live in the rest. Well, there's things you can do, and pressures and easy access to credit that I think can cause people a lot of stresses, even if they're blind to the fact that it's causing them stress.
I think that's one thing probably people aren't talking about either. I think to your point, what are people not talking about? I don't know very many young professionals who don't have student loans. I mean, I don't know very many middle-aged people who, it's not something that goes away very quick. So I think that is probably something there's a lot of people talking about. I don't know, maybe we need more like Dave Ramsey or seminars in town or something on that, because I hear everybody complain about them, but I don't hear anybody talking about strategies to pay them off quicker. And I think you're right with the access to credit. Gosh, you don't want to give up your lifestyle. I mean, I want to go to Bubba. I want to go to like the hot spots. I don't want to miss out on everything that's happening and new and fun in Des Moines. But you got to pay those things off too. So it's probably something we should be talking more about. Maybe do panel. Maybe there's a panel on it.
Well, somebody on our aging panel said that they're seeing people retiring with student debt, not just their kids' debt, but a combination of their kids' debt. And that was something principal financial group, and he was talking about that. And that's something that is really, I think, really scary. And I think it's going to change. It makes you act in different ways. So if I have to get a better job, or I need a job that pays more money, I never really want to be in that position when people are feeling that way. You're not really taught in school how to balance your own personal budget.
You're not taught how to retire either. So.
Right.
The only other thing I would add, just to your question, because Chris and I have been talking about this a lot more lately, is like careers. I think when you start out, you think careers go like this, and I think most people's careers kind of go like this and all over the place. But I think you hit a point. It's hard to figure out if that means you're doing it right or wrong, or just kind of what to expect, and that can be hard to talk about. So, and I think it's something you start to run into more and more as you go along as a young professional. And how do you make the choice about what the next step is? What is up and what's down? And it's not always a clear trajectory.
At some point, the feedback stops, right? So you graduate middle school, you graduate high school, college, you get your first job, maybe a promotion or two, but then what? Right? Maybe you get 40 and 40, you go through GDMI, you get on a YPC board, and then what? And I think that's really interesting. How do you know you're still on that same on the path or ladder, or however you want to describe it?
It's kind of a tough town to have some of those conversations with too, because it's a small town. I mean, it's hard. I don't know. I think it would be hard for things to stay confidential, and hard to have those confidential conversations about what's next when you probably know the person in the next booth next to you. I mean, I think that's maybe part of it.
Any other fears?
I fear that Des Moines is going to grow to a size where it's not going to be islandized anymore. I want to make sure that is at the tip of our thinking when we continue to press on growth and evolution, that's what makes Des Moines really great. That's what makes the state of Iowa really great, is when you come here, we're incredibly hospitable. You meet anybody on the sidewalk and you go, hey, how you doing? Hope you have a great day. I don't want to lose that. I want to make sure that we keep that piece of Des Moines that is incredibly unique to what we have, and I want to make sure that conversation is being had as we continue to progress as a city.
But not misconstrued as not wanting the growth,
Right. Yeah.
Because it would be great if, I was just saying the other day, some of the unique, fresh ideas that have come in, you need 10 of those ideas. And so where are those going to hit? Not only could they come from inside, but how can you find other ways to do it? But at the same time, like you said, maintain that.
It's going to be a balancing act, I think.
Well, we're just about at the end of time here. To our audience watching online, I appreciate you watching. My name again is Chris Conetzkey. I'm editor of the Business Record and Carothers-Kay. Some of our best story ideas always come from our audience. And so what I want to encourage you to do is if you this spurred an idea or a thought, something that you want to reach out to us with, feel free to go ahead and do that. We're going to take the content from this and it'll be in a story in the business record. So thank you guys all for participating.
Thank you.
Thank you.